Fetterman is actually saying, okay, let's calm it down. But he's the only one I could see saying anything sensible. Whereas Gavin Newsom's official Twitter account has been saying in block capitals, Stephen Miller is a fascist, which seems now at this point just classic stochastic terrorism. Do you see the Democrats ever becoming a proper party, well, in the near future? Or are they just going to go further down this route of sort of encouraging violence?
No, they're definitely going to go down this route of encouraging violence. It's literally their entire strategy at this point. The Democrats have totally embraced their role as basically a front face for a revolution inside the United States, right? Like these people know that BLM and Antifa really are their foot soldiers, their shock troops. They're just their brown shirts. They're the mob that they deploy. That's not technically a weapon of the state, not technically part of the Democratic Party, but is absolutely acting on their behalf and under their direction. And they know that threatening and violence is a critical part of their strategy. Let's not pretend this is like something new. Democrats in the United States have been fomenting race riots my entire life. People talk about how, race relations were so great in the 90s. No, Democrats were doing the LA riots in 1992. Koreans were shooting at black rioters from their rooftops to stop them from burning down their businesses. This is absolutely nothing new from the left, from the days of rage that everyone is now suddenly remembering, where the Weather Underground and the constant bombings and the Symbionese Liberation, Front or Army, whatever they called themselves. Like the left has been a terrorist network pretty much all of my life and many other people's lives. It's intensifying now again. We're going back to a late 60s, early 70s level of violence. And so people are recognizing this fact a little more. But if you go back and look, one of the most famous ads in the United States presidential history was Richard Nixon's Return to Order ad, which was just basically playing directly off the days of rage, basically directly playing off the level of violence that the left was causing on a regular basis in the United States. That's one of the reasons Nixon became such a dominant political figure, is he was capable of ending that violence. And that's why he got the level of support. So no, I think this is more the Democrats honestly returning to their roots than, going back to a peaceful mode of politics would be a strange thing for them. The violence is part of their strategy.
Right. And you mentioned there Nixon stopping it. How does it get stopped now? I mean, I've heard of using RICO, which I don't understand massively being English. But I've heard about that being used to target NGOs that encourage violence. People like Ted Cruz have mentioned this. I've heard of, and of course, Trump has talked about designating Antifa as a terrorist organization. I don't know if that's been done yet. He's also deployed troops in Portland for the next 2 months, but Oregon has responded with a lawsuit. So how do you shut down leftist violence within the law?
Pretty easily. So first, yes, Trump did designate Antifa as a domestic terror organization. Unfortunately, that is not there's no legal powers that are attached to that. So the way executive orders work in the United States framework is an executive order is basically like a law that only the executive branch has to follow, because the president only has direct control over the executive branch. Congress has to pass actual nationwide laws. So when Trump creates a executive order, it's basically just a directive to all of the federal agencies, which is powerful to an extent, but it is not this like sweeping legislation that forces all the other municipalities and states or that kind of thing to follow as well. So what would be better if Trump designated a foreign terrorist organization, because that actually has legal powers attached to it. It actually opens up different things you can do to Antifa. However, his current order does direct the Joint Terrorism Task Force to treat Antifa as a terrorist organization, which I guess basically it's telling the rest of the federal government that doesn't want to do what Trump is telling you to do that you have to. Most people don't recognize this, but Trump doesn't really control chunks of the executive branch, even though he's supposed to under the Constitution, which is why he needs to pass executive orders telling these people, no, you have to do this or we're going to fire you, basically. And then on top of that, you have, as you said, the National Guard deployed to Portland. This should have been done immediately as soon as these people were, firing in and shooting at, ICE agents. Like that should have been the end of it. Any amount of even mild force on a the purse of an ICE agent or on an ICE facility should be met as an extreme criminal act. All of these things can be charged. The main reason that the left just hasn't been crushed is that the right can't be bothered. The things that the left is doing is illegal. So you can just go after them and you can actually make that happen. Now, the problem is that in some of these places you have liberal judges, right? So one of the things you can try to do, which is what the left did with J6, is change the venue, right? So the reason that the J6 prosecutions were so terrible is that all of these people were tried in DC, where all of the judges and all of the juries would be very hostile to them, right? By making sure they weren't tried in their home states, that ensured that there would be a bias against them immediately. Well, one of the things that the liberals do is they shield these Antifa people by putting them in front of liberal judges who say, oh, well, I'm going to give you a slap on the wrist because actually you're in Portland, and in Portland, we don't care. So we charge them with some kind of federal crime. We move the venue to a place where we can actually get them, prosecuted, and we make that happen. And when it comes to RICO, the main thing is that RICO is a broad spectrum of like criminal network law. Basically, it's the crime of being a criminal at an organized level. It was originally used to go after the mob because they were operating in so many different ways that were slightly criminal, or they were hard to prove individually, but collectively it was obvious that they were operating a criminal conspiracy. And so what RICO allows you to do is pull many different threads together into one prosecution and prosecute them as a larger entity. So instead of just prosecuting individual mobsters, that kind of thing, you're able to pull the entire criminal organization together and say, oh no, these crimes are all attached to each other. And so they matter and you can use them. So what RICO allows you to do is say, okay, technically each one of these NGOs is maybe just doing one violation here, one violation there. Maybe we can prove that they were knowingly funding a riot here to some extent with that one organization. But if we pull them together, we can recognize that all of these individual actions add up into a larger criminal case, a criminal conspiracy that we can then prosecute under RICO. So there are a lot of tools that they can use legally. You just actually have to go through the effort of making the system work, which Republicans have just never bothered to do.
Right, and I'll get on to that. But I wanted to ask, so that thing with the NGOs sort of pretending to be separate, it's a bit like you said on Twitter about the Antifa. People are like, oh, it's not an organization. Look, they're not even related. They're all spread around the country. And you're like, yeah, that's how all terrorist cells work. They don't say, here's our headquarters, come in and have a drink. They say, we're not related so that one shuts down, the other ones can carry on. That's the strategy, right?
Yeah, this is in fact just the classic in any insurgency. This is how you want to operate, right? Because if you have a terrorist cell and one person gets compromised, a federal agent gets in there, someone does something stupid and exposes the cell. If you have in that cell then like a list of all the people who have joined Antifa, if you have a list of all of the people who've donated and if you have everything written out, like obviously it's a disaster. So the way that all of these organizations work is the cell is a small handful of people. Usually they're working independently for the most part, but they are receiving aid and direction from other parts of the cell. But the key is you usually in a properly constituted network like this, you actually make sure that the cells don't even know the other members of other cells, right? Like at most you have one person who contacts one other person of a different cell. You don't know everyone in other cells on purpose. Like you compartmentalize, you hermetically seal them away so that if one gets rolled over, you can't get the other one. So this is explaining, oh, well, they don't even have like they didn't even file paperwork with the federal government, and they don't even have a tax filing. And they don't, of course they don't. Like that's the whole point. If you did that, you would make your entire operation very easy to take down. And yes, the NGOs work the same way. Technically, there's 1,000 of these things, but in reality, they're all receiving funding from the same few sources. They're all speaking the same language. They're coordinating with each other. Their efforts overlap. Clearly, while technically being separate organizations, they are in a network that is pushing towards a particular goal.
Yeah, and just for anyone that doesn't know, it's my understanding when we talked about ICE that someone the other day shot up an ICE fan, but they accidentally killed the illegals, not the ICE people, and then they kill themselves. And is that correct?
Yeah, as far as we know, obviously the details are still coming in, but it looks like the shooter was on the rooftop. He fired a few rounds into a blacked out ICE van. We would imagine, assuming trying to kill the agents inside that van, not recognizing that the van was full of detainees who had been scooped up by those ICE agents as well. And obviously nobody deserves to be gunned down from a rooftop, but thankfully the agents were not the ones hit. It was the detainees who were hit. So he actually ended up only shooting the very people he theoretically was trying to like save. And then he ended up shooting himself. I don't know if that was just the plan from the beginning, or once he realized the level of failure that he went ahead and decided to take the easy way out. But yeah, he managed to obviously attempt to murder ICE agents, but only ended up killing the detainees.
Because it's insane. It was focused on sort of the Charlie Kirk assassination, which obviously was horrific and monumental in many ways. But then you've got the ICE shooting. Wasn't a Mormon church just shot as well?
Yeah, that one's a little more out in the weeds. So, from what we can tell in the Mormon church shooting, the guy was an Iraq veteran. Of course, that does not in any way make him right wing. There are plenty of veterans who are left wing and hate the government and hate the Republicans. So with that, that doesn't necessarily tell us anything. People have said he had a "Stop Trump" sign on his house. I don't know. Again, this is all kind of fog of war because it just happened yesterday. So I'm not as ready to ascribe that to leftist terrorism yet. It could be a guy who just had a personal grudge against the Mormon church. Could be a lunatic. There we do not have with Charlie Kirk. We had a specific ideology, written on the bullets when we had that shooting of the Catholic Church just a few weeks ago in Minnesota. There was a trans shooter with the ideology written on the gun. When it came to the ICE shooting, again, ideology written on the bullets. There's a pattern here that the leftists are taking. We have not seen that pattern in that attack. And so I don't want to jump to conclusions. But of course, if it ultimately comes out that this guy was a leftist who just hated anyone who is kind of Christian coded, red state coded, that would not shock me. But I don't want to assume that right away.